It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
All right. America, you're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I'm your host. I know that that's a bold statement. Am I speaking for America? Well, I think in a large part, in a lot of ways, I am. I think what I'm talking about every day is what America's concerned about. Not Dancing with the Stars and Justin Bieber's illegitimate baby and what Lindsay Lohan, which jail she's going to this week. I know a lot of people want to be distracted by that because they don't want to face the truth. But we believe here in truth. We believe here in being situationally aware. And I hope that you'll join us every day. You can join us every day by visiting us on the web. You can find our website. We've got a Facebook page. We've got a YouTube channel. We broadcast live, or not live. We broadcast recorded on a number of different radio stations. We have a dial-in listen line that you can dial if you want to catch our show on off hours. I'll give that information to you now. You can dial into our listen line, which enables you to listen to the entire show from 6 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock. And then it's 6 o'clock at night to 8 o'clock at night. So if you can't get to the show live, or you can't catch it on one of our radio stations, or you don't have time for Facebook, or you're just traveling in the car and you just want to listen, here's a perfect way for you to do it. There's 2 phone numbers I'm going to give you. Write these down. Area code 712-432-5339. The second number is 213-992-4323. I'm going to give that to you one more time. 712-432-5339 or 213-992-4323. Now, that's 6 to 8 a.m. and p.m., okay? So you can listen in at any time you want on those hours just by dialing those 2 lines. And you can sit there on your cell phone and listen to the whole program. Put a set of headphones on, and boom, you're off to the races. You can catch us live on our website at 8 to 10 a.m., and you can jump over to americasvoicenow.org. There's a big window right there below the main header at the top, and you can literally watch the show live. You can go to americasvoicenow.org. 8 a.m. in the morning, Central Time. You simply click the play button, and boom, you're in. You can actually watch the program. You can listen to us on a number of different venues, including live radio, on our brand new station, KUNQ, which is out of the Houston, Missouri area, covers a broad swath of South Central Missouri. You can find us at 99.3 on the FM dial. So I encourage you to do that. That show broadcasts at 10 p.m. to midnight. So if you're a late nighter, or you work early in the morning, and or you work late in the afternoon, there's a perfect way for you to catch the show there. We also have a YouTube channel, and you can go there and catch every show that we do live in video. And the way that you do that is by going to youtube.com. You put in a /. That's the one right underneath the question mark. So it's youtube.com / America's Voice Now. America has an S on the end. There's no apostrophe. So it's America's Voice Now. You can also find us on our Facebook page, where we post up all kinds of links and stories and all kinds of news and information every day. And that is facebook.com / America's Voice Now. And then our website is americasvoicenow.org. You know, there's so many different ways for you to catch up with us and follow along with the things that we talk about and work with every day. It's amazing if People say, well, I don't know where to get you. I don't know where to hear it. Okay. Then you're not trying. All right. We want to talk about this Fed quantitative easing debt explosion. The other day, an announcement was made that at the present moment in time, the current amount of debt that is held by the Federal Reserve is $3.39 trillion. Now, the Fed is buying $40 billion a month in mortgage-backed securities, and then they're buying another $45 billion in U.S. Treasuries per month. That's $85 billion. They came out the other day and said they're not going to slow that down. They were talking about whether or not they should, knock it down by $5 billion or $10 billion and slowly but surely what they call unwinding, right? The problem is that they can't unwind because they've painted themselves into this corner where at this point, if they try to unwind, inflation will grow so fast that we may be the next Zimbabwe. Yes, Zimbabwe. The problem we have is this. First of all, as of right now, this moment, the Federal Reserve owns $3.4 trillion worth of U.S. debt. That's both mortgage-backed securities and treasuries. That tells us two things. One, that is more debt than all the presidents between George Washington and Bill Clinton at the end of his term had accumulated collectively. What? Yes, that's the truth. The Federal Reserve is currently holding more U.S. debt than all presidents from Washington to Clinton combined. That's a stunning figure. The second issue is the Federal Reserve is no more federal than Federal Express. In other words, it is a private bank owned by private shareholders. It is a cabal, a monetary mafia. And they are holding our debt and holding it over our heads. They have the unmitigated goal to tell Congress what we do and the monetary policy that we create and live by is really none of your business. And yet, they hold the keys to the castle of interest rates, mortgage and loan availability through banks. They have control of most banking in the United States. And every time that there's a swing of a boom and a bust, they absorb more banks underneath their control. Banks who do their bidding. The Federal Reserve is the most exigent threat to the national security of the United States of America, short of Congress and this administration itself. That's the truth. You have a greater chance of being killed by your own government than you do from some Islamic terrorist, number one. Number two, the odds of you being killed by some Islamic terrorists in the United States of America are less than you being struck by lightning. And I defy you to know anyone who's actually been struck. Most people will say, nope, don't know anybody like that. Read about it once. The simple truth is this. We are in a position right now where everything is teetering. You ever see a top that spins on a table? Somebody spins that top and boy, it's got stability. But as the centrifugal force starts to dissipate and the top slows down, it becomes less and less stable and it begins to wobble. And then as again, the more it wobbles, the more friction it creates and the more unstable it becomes and the faster it begins to slow. And eventually, the top loses the ability to allow centrifugal force to maintain its upright position and it flops over. Folks, we're past the point of an initial wobble or two. We're now at the stage where basically the top is almost fallen on its side. This economic scenario that we're in tells me, and it looks very similar to this analogy. Here you are on a horse, which is a high-strung animal, and you're riding down a path, and, unlike your normal horse, this one is very, very high-strung, very nervous, and a leaf skitters across the path. Something that ordinarily wouldn't really affect you. But this horse rears and throws you. And that's where we're at. The smallest ripple, the smallest unexpected, unintended consequence can completely take the United States of America's economic scenario to its knees. And if and when a monetary and financial collapse comes, individual states are not prepared for it. The national government is not prepared for it. The global economy is not prepared for it. And what will happen is we will be thrown into, for all intents and purposes, the Dark Ages. You think I'm kidding? No, I mean literally like the Dark Ages. Like the Dark Ages where there were no doctors and disease and shortages of food and rampant, lawlessness. There is no way that we can continue down this path. Every independent, even some of the sycophantic voice boxes of this administration are telling us that we are in an unstable, unsustainable condition financially. We are unsustainable. Unsustainable means we can't continue going on like this. And yet the Fed is buying even more debt. $85 billion a month is the equivalent of the entire U.S. deficit. What that means to you is we are buying back our own debt. Why that's important is because it tells us that the nations which we all consider to be danger to us by holding our debt are not really as dangerous as we might think. China holds $1.3 trillion. Japan, the second largest holder, holds about $1.1 trillion. The Fed has $3.4 trillion. And here's the problem. China and Japan don't want any more debt. That's why the Fed is buying it. Now, if that doesn't scare the pants off of you, in other words, no one will lend us money but a private bank. That's like finding that you're in business and you go to all the banks in your neighborhood and you say, look, I've been in business for the last 120 years. We're just trying to make ends meet and we need a small loan. And all the banks turn you down. And finally you turn and you go to whom? A loan shark. And what does he say? Sure, what do you need? $100,000? Okay, hey, that's no problem. I'll take it. You can pick it up in a brown bag on Wednesday. But I'll be by the following Wednesday to pick up my VIG. And it's all hunky-dory until, suddenly you fall short of payment. And then the real pressure starts to come back to visit. That's when the guys show up with the bats. We are in a position where we have allowed our nation to become fully contained by federal and central banking. I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to read you a little quote from a guy who really understood the dangers of this. He warned us about it a long, long time ago. And yet, over and over and over, we have allowed what we were warned would be the greatest risk to us to happen. Here's what the quote says. If the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their money, first by inflation and then by deflation, the banks and corporations that will grow up around them, meaning the banks, will deprive the people of their property until their children will wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered. That's Thomas Jefferson. Let me read that again because I want you to understand it. If the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their money supply, first by inflation and then by deflation, the banks and corporations that will grow up around them will deprive the people of their property until their children will wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered. Now, let's understand the implications of that. First of all, when we talk about inflation and deflation, that's exactly what the Fed was birthed to stop in 1913. And yet, we have had more boom and bust cycles, inflation and deflation, than we ever had before the Fed came into play and into being. So what we have to realize is that we've placed a private mob, a thuggery organization in charge of our nation's finances. We've allowed them to inflate and then deflate. And by the way, every time inflation comes along, it's the thing that steals the resources, financial, economic, our natural resources from us as a nation, because it goes into their coffers. Here's the example. Where did the Fed get $3.4 trillion to lend us? It was our money in the first place, number one. Number two, they don't actually have $3.4 trillion. They just manufacture money by adding a few zeros into the electronic computer systems. If you don't understand what the Federal Reserve is and how dangerous they are to us as a nation, I strongly encourage you to, and to some people, banking is like Chinese math. I get it. They just don't like it. They don't understand it. They don't want to learn it. I promise you it's not as difficult as you might think. But I would also encourage you to educate yourself about it, because it's so critically important that you understand money and how it works, because it's the key to everything. It's the key to all corruption. It's the key to all coercion. It's the key to our survival as a nation. And if you don't understand it, then you're not in a position to really defend and protect and help us to move to the next level, or to at least restore ourselves to a constitutional foundational basis where central banks don't exist, where our treasury is actually in charge of the money supply instead of handing it off to a third-party private bank. The American people have allowed private banks to control the issue of our money. We have allowed them first by inflation and then by deflation to rape our national resources, our property, our income, our natural resources, our financial and economic resources. We have allowed them to hold hostage our businesses, our industries. And their only loyalty is not to a flag with 50 stars. Their loyalty is to their wallet. They are a corporation, a private bank. They are not even a public bank. In fact, we are not allowed to audit them. They haven't been audited since 1913. That's 100 years, people, and they've never been audited. And the reason they resist being audited, because there's been plenty of calls for it, is that they cannot justify what they've done. And if anyone were to ever audit them, we would find out that basically the $3.39 trillion they've lent us never existed in the first place. We'd find out what a Ponzi scheme it actually was. A Ponzi scheme that is built on the premise that everybody believes, so it's real. But at some point, even the most ridiculous supporter of the Ponzi scheme has to acknowledge that it's not really real, that the promises were false, that the money never existed. And then reality comes in, the reality of Ayn Rand, the reality that says, you can ignore reality, but you can't ignore the consequences of reality. You know, think about that guy, what the heck was his name? The guy who stole $50 billion and ran a Ponzi scheme. He's in prison now. I can't think of what his name is. But, you know, at some point, all those people who had been putting money into his investment program had to realize that, you know, they could still have all the faith in him they wanted. They could still wish beyond wishful hope that there was really money there to be taken back out by them. But when the whole thing imploded or exploded, or however you want to refer to it, even they had to acknowledge that money was gone. And it impacted their life, their business, and everything else. The reality cannot be ignored when the consequence is the new reality. You can only live in, you know, some kind of a fool's paradise for so long. And at some point in time, the utopian shell has to fall away, and you're exposed to the elements. In this case, we are waking up homeless on the continent that our fathers conquered. We are waking up homeless. You don't own your home. The bank owns your home. You don't own your car. The bank owns it. Stop paying for it for a month or two and you'll see. I mean, this isn't a case where you've got any control over anything. Stop paying your taxes on your home and you'll see the government step in and take it. They are taking properties over from senior citizens for the most paltry. And by the way, guess who's buying that debt? Banks. And yet, when it comes time for them to collapse, we, the taxpayers, catch that bill too. I mean, it's not bad enough that they've been raping us, but then we're told that when they collapse, we've got to contribute again to support them and save them. I don't want them saved. Let them win in the boom or bust cycle just like everybody else, like the shoe store, like the guy who runs a food market, like the farmer, like the manufacturer. Nobody steps in to help him when, you know, the economy turns south or a new product comes out that changes the tenor and the tone of his industry, and suddenly his product isn't saleable anymore, or he's fallen behind in the manufacturing aspect and he either can't produce enough or the costs are too high. You're listening to America's Voice Now. I hope we're making sense to you. I hope we're bringing you up to a level of awareness, and I don't want you to be discouraged. I want you to be encouraged, but I also want you to be cognizant. I want you to use your critical thinking skills to look around you, see it, smell it, taste it. It's everywhere. And we, as the grassroots saviors of America, have to step up to the plate. There is no white horse. There is no white knight on a steed. It's us. We'll be back in just a moment. Stick with us. When we return, we're going to talk about the IRS and the 1 million trucker raid on D.C. that's coming in October. I want you to be a part of that. We'll be right back.